Do what's right, never give up on it.
Yes, now let's get the show started. 2 attacks in as many weeks in Nigeria's Plateau state have left more than 100 people dead in a region known for intercommunal conflict and land disputes between herders and farmers. You know, this herders and farmers thing, like they say in street parlance, it is now becoming more than be careful. People can't go to their farms. Herders are moving southwards, mainly because of global warming, desertification. So those who have farms cannot even go and farm, which is the reason why food is so expensive in the market.
Alero, I saw a video when I, was alone for a bit, and I saw a soldier. Well, we'll ask our guests, of course, saying that they are even forbidden to go after the bandits.
I saw that video too.
You saw the video too?
I saw the video.
So whether or not it is true, the government, the security apparatus have to speak to that. Now, this issue that you have raised, several efforts have been made over time to stave off these farmer-herder clashes. What is holding it? I traveled for a week. I went to different parts of Nigeria. I went to Kaduna, I went to Calabar, and I was in Abuja. I saw lush green all over the place. When you are in the air in Nigeria, you will see lush green. So how come
they are not eating those, and they are eating farm crops?
We need questions.
They are eating crops.
We have questions to ask.
Anyway, we have loads of questions for our panel this morning, and joining us, making up that panel, we have the Regional Vice President, ASIS International. Sorry?
Former
Regional Vice President, ASIS International West and Central Africa Region, Mr. Sheyi Adetayo.
Good morning.
Morning, good to see you again.
Thank you.
And joining us virtually, we have Pastor Laddie Thompson, conflict resolution and counter-terrorism expert. Morning, Pastor.
Good morning.
And we also have the Chairman, Governing Council, Federal Polytechnic Ileoluji, and former Commissioner of Information in Plateau State, Mr. Yakubu Dati. Mr. Dati, good morning.
Good morning, and good morning, viewers.
Yes. Let me begin with you, Mr. Adetayo. We are talking about this, and we have been talking about this, but there doesn't seem to be any let-up. People are being killed. Benue is shouting. Plateau is shouting. And it looks like the danger is moving further south. What are we doing, or what are we not doing, that there doesn't seem to be any let-up?
Okay, good morning. And I'm also happy to have Pastor Thompson on here. I think this will be the second time we'll be having conversation around this. Both of us being on the same panel.
Yes.
Yeah, I think, you see, we can't continue to do the same thing, things same way, and we're expecting a different result. Our approach has shown that we're not getting the desired results. I want to take us back to what the current DGSS said about the need for communities to begin to defend themselves. And some people took it from a different light or meaning. But for some of us that have seen where that had worked in Nigeria, I think it is high time that we really try to look at it and then adopt it in such a way that it will work. And I'll give examples. Some time ago, many years back in Anambra State, when robbery was rife, killings and robberies, kidnapping wasn't that high as at that time. And community town unions had to, shout, created vigilante groups, and they were actually making, getting results. So the state had to get involved, the police, and the town unions were empowered to procure vehicles, pump action rifles, under the supervision of the Nigerian police. I think then we had the CP, then later Commissioner of Police, Bello, was the CP that later took over this practice. And town unions financed this, bought vehicles, but the weapons were registered by the Nigerian police in Anambra State. And they did training for them, both weapon handling and modus operandi. And this worked in Anambra State. The vigilantes then, they were patrolling key areas. Now, the difference here between what some state governors are doing is trying to create a whole security apparatus where you just bring people and ask them. This one was
That is
owned
central.
by the communities,
Okay.
but the state supervised it. The police, the security agencies supervised. They were working under the shadows of the Nigerian police. Now, when they arrest, they bring them to the Nigerian police. So there was no what is it called, jungle justice. But there was only when there was exchange of fire between armed robbers that, casualties were recorded. But outside that, they were arresting and bringing to. It worked in Anambra State. And it also worked in some states. It can work in Nigeria.
So how is it different from the JTF?
Okay, JTF is a government structure where, depending on
No, the
civilian,
one,
are you doing civilian
yes,
JTF? Okay,
civilian JTF.
I'll tell you. See, if you look at Plateau State, for example, we have different tribes there. Now, if you create a JTF in Plateau State, where it is mainly composed of, let's say, the majority of the ethnic group, how do you guarantee that the minority will not claim bias against them? But if it is community-owned process where each community are empowered to create, but recognized by the government, they are responsible for protecting their own community. It will prevent this. Because most times, some of these things that we record are actually individuals carrying out nefarious activities that are being seen from the lenses of tribal and religious intent.
Well, maybe there are some perspectives we don't understand. So let me ask Mr. Dati in our Abuja studio. I mean, you've been in Plateau State for a bit, so you probably have some information that we don't have about, how this whole thing is playing out. Give us some background, because the president told the governor, enough is enough. We can't continue like this. It would seem like the president was saying, look, we know that this thing can be arrested. We've also heard a former governor, Governor Jonah Jang, say that the people who are fomenting this trouble are not ghosts, they are known, and that they have a specific agenda. So help us understand what is going on and why it can't be tracked.
Thank you very much, Ayo, for the opportunity. And I'd like to say that the issue in Plateau State, Plateau is not isolated from the attacks that have been taking place across the country. But whenever such issues come to Plateau, they begin to raise the underlying inter-ethnic and inter-tribal religious underbelly. But the most important thing I want to emphasize at this point is that there's been a combination of efforts across party lines, about tribes, across the region, to support the efforts of the Governor Mutfwang, towards restoring peace in the state. And that is why a lot of things are happening. Like the last speaker spoke, we have the Operation Rainbow, which is like a community-based, like civilian JTF, comparable to other places, which is also operating effectively across the neighborhoods. But what is the modus operandi of most of these attacks is that you don't see them. They just appear from nowhere and disappear. And that is why I agree that the issues on community policing should be promoted, like the IG mentioned yesterday about supporting community policing. It means they work in conjunction with the community, the vigilantes, to be able to get intelligence and information for early warning, and also mobilize the community to be able to be the first spot of response to all these attacks. Of course, as has happened in Plateau, gradually the issues are moving away from, these issues are clearly criminality. They are criminals that are invading the state. But gradually it is beginning to assume a different dimension as religious entrepreneurs take advantage of it. ethnic champions take advantage of it. So you begin to lose the focus. And that is why it's important to begin to look at who is doing this. Is it a criminal enterprise? How do we approach? How do we ensure that the justice system operates fairly? And that is why I must commend the collaboration between the federal government, because immediately the first attack took place, Malonru and Badu, the NSA was in Jos to assess the situation.
Mr. Dati, I apologize.
We are beginning to see a lot of...
It will seem like you haven't quite, addressed the question that I hoped you would, address. The president said in his statement, this has gone on for 20 years. Now that is, by all standards, unacceptable. And we have had governors after governor, one governor after the other, for the past 20 years in Plateau State. What has happened is that we have lost lives. We have lost livelihoods. We have lost, not numbers, we have lost human beings, fathers, mothers, children, who suddenly just wake up and find out that they do not have the people who they loved anymore. So the question that I'm asking is, why is it intractable? Is it ethno-religious? Is it communal? What exactly is the problem? And why is it difficult to track? You said that it is not different from what is happening in different parts of the country. But it doesn't happen in every part of the country. And in some countries that these things have happened, they have been staved off. So why does it seem intractable that it is repetitive in Plateau State from time to time? We understand, I think it was as if the governor was saying about 60 communities in Plateau State are under some kind of occupation.
Well, for a start, the lush vegetation in Plateau State attracts a lot. And don't forget also that Plateau is like the home of solid minerals in Nigeria. So a lot of people are coming in, a lot of interests are coming in that has to do with land. And that is why there's been legislation in the area of ensuring that the state develops an equitable process where land is shared and enjoyed both by herders and the farmers. And also, it is also important to look at the fact that we have, apart from the attacks, there are kidnappings, there are criminal elements that are masquerading as fighting a cause. And at the end of the day, if we fall into their narrative, we will miss the point. And that is why it's important to isolate and deal with these criminal issues as criminal issues and support the security agencies who have since gone down to ensure that they get information to deal with, to nip this in the bud. And that is where early warning signals are important. Those underlying issues that have to do with tribal or religious sensitivities and fault lines are there. We cannot pretend that they are not there. But most important is, what is the proactive steps the security agencies are taking? It brings to mind the fact that they need to work with the community.
Just a second. Yes. Is it safe to say that the communal clashes that you said are there are intractable? Is it impossible for the people to live together as one? We know about Ife and Modakeke in the same state. It eventually was resolved. This is 20 years gone on, sir.
Yes, I assure you, and that's why there is a need for us, for the security agencies to liaise with the community. Because the first impact, the first people that are hard hit are the immediate innocent community who sleep and wake up and find their relatives and their families being slaughtered for no reason, for no cause of them. So that is why it's important to look at the issues that are on board, and that brings in the issue of creating an opportunity for dialogue, for communication, for understanding. Because the solution still lies with understanding, dialogue, and also creating a credible justice system such that the criminals who are arrested are not only prosecuted, but seem to be prosecuted justly, so that we isolate the criminality from those people that are trying to take advantage of the underbelly that continues to threaten the peace in the state. And I want to say at this,
Pastor Thompson, I need to bring you in at this point. I was reading a document which alleged that Nigeria has the largest number of retired generals and also has the largest number of generals in the world. If that is the case, how is it that motley groups all over Nigeria are taking over portions of Nigeria and they are lording it over the people in a country that boasts of generals? I mean, are we not embarrassed by this? A country as large as ours that has a working army, has a working government, and people are just taking over portions of our land and, doing exactly as they please in those places. And we cannot even catch them and deal with them.
Thank you very much. This is a very serious issue that we are here again and again saying the same thing over and over again. I want to remember my friend Enai Komo, who also used to be on this platform. We've said the same thing for decades. First of all, there's a method to the madness. You are dealing with something that's extremely intelligent. I know that politicians must be politicians, but this is a Easter period for Plateau State that's predominantly Christian. And I think John 18:38, even Pilate asked the question, what is truth? So I believe that we are here to establish some degree of truth. Now, what is happening is so clear. We have said it again and again. It's a hydra. It's extremely intelligent. To say it's a herder-farmer clash and conflict is the narrative that the international community borrowed us. And I remember there was a meeting we had once, I think, with Tony Blair when he was, after he was Prime Minister of Britain. When they had 7-7 in Britain, it was not a farmer-herd clash. They interpreted this hydra properly and intelligently. For the man from Plateau State, first of all, I want to commend Muftwang. Very brave man. Young man, very brave. But the truth is this. I remember that once during one of their crises, I was in Riyom in 2001 when David Silas was killed. I was serving, under CAN then, so it was my purview to investigate these things and, look for solutions. And I remember when we told Plateau State then that there was trouble coming, it was an intelligent problem. Somebody said, look, that's the most peaceful place in Nigeria. Don't you know the meaning of JOS? That there can never be such troubles here. I recall in the tenure of Governor Yang, I spoke to their cabinet, gave them a timeline of what had been happening in their state all along unnoticed. They are dealing with the hydra. It creeps on you. It's very intelligent. I remember that in the course of my meeting with their cabinet then, there was, I think, a commissioner called Manjang, whose his parents were slaughtered by this same machinery, who was a commissioner when I was addressing the Plateau State executive. So I don't really understand what we're saying here. We are being beaten by masters of the game. I told us a long time ago, go back into the archives, I'm going to bring back what we've said over and over again, that you are dealing with something that has 4 stages. We're approaching the final stage. We're dealing with the hydra. Look, in that same Plateau State, are they going to say that if they want to speak truth, they didn't find out there was a lot of intelligence? In fact, at one time, a man was caught who was sewing army uniforms for the people who were attacking. And I remember that, you see, when this matter was brought up, we need to interrogate some of this. I don't understand Nigeria at all. First of all, the generals we have in Nigeria, this problem is way beyond the architecture of thought of clause trinity of war. Most of the training that the generals received was not to handle hybrid threats, asymmetric warfare. We're talking about media as a force expander. They are not equipped to handle this thing. And it's very facetious for us to come here and sit down when people are dying. You see, this is what makes my heart bleed. Everything we've said over here again, we've said it before, again and again. I don't even understand why we gather to say it all over again. It's the most important aspect right now is the fact that it's a media war of narratives, okay? And one thing that we have established is that there's some degree of complicity in high places. Whether it was when the governor of Kaduna State went out to go and pay off his people, or was it the body bags issue? Was it the lady who spoke about cows being equal to the value of human worth? Aisha Duku, I think, from Gombe State, who was honorable then. Or was it the times when we were arguing over these issues when I remember that Senator Akpabio at that time had to put his foot down when they were talking about freedom or whatever it was? Listen, we are coming to a place sooner or later in this country where we're going to discover that the first Prime Minister of Nigeria was absolutely right. Abubakar Tafawa Balewa on the 7th of October 1960 was at the UN General Assembly. And he spoke about the future. He spoke about these days. He said, I don't know how unintelligent we want to get with this issue. Even in the colonial times, go and find out what they call the Mangin Papers. The French were the ones who sent it to the colonial government here. They predicted the storylines of all these things. So I don't get it why we don't realize that as long as we have no value for human worth. Look, I don't blame the president of Nigeria. This thing is bigger than even the president of Nigeria. You know what a simultaneous equation is? Nigeria is a part of the sub-region of West Africa. West Africa is part of Africa. Africa is part of a global community. This thing is a global, intelligent threat, recognized all over the world. And every country sits down to address it appropriately. Every time we come around, we say, do this, do that. Listen to me. Of what purpose is it to belong to a nation if you have to end up arming yourselves to defend your own life? You see, it's disheartening, more so when we want to forget that I say it's a hydra. Ask yourself a question. A young man was on his farm, a student with a pregnant wife, and in come the people we call, what's that name we call them? I can't remember what silly name like that Nigeria calls. We'll call a spade because we can face truth. Come onto his farm and attack him. He's able to resist the attack. He's been wounded. He takes the knife away from his assailant who wants to murder him and is able to neutralize the threat. And what does Nigeria do? Nigeria sentences him to death. Do we really understand what is going on? Can we join the dots all around? Listen, while I was consulting for Plateau State, we told Benue that they were next. We knew. And let everybody say whatever they will. The Southwest, we had already told them. I remember way back, we've been on channels, we've talked about, asking government to do satellite imagery to see the number of camps that were already, as far back as 10, 8, 9, 12 years ago, that were already in place in the forest. So what are we talking about here?
So my apologies, Pastor Thompson. When you hear the president say we can no longer ignore the underlying issues, is that to assume that he understands what you're saying?
Well, I want us to be very careful because remember that every politician thinks about the next election and statesmen think about the next generation. People like us can afford to think about the next generation, but I want to say that naturally a politician must think about the next election. Now, the truth of the dynamics of power is such that Nigeria, call a spade a spade. In the dispensation before this president, we had an Al-Qaeda operative who was made a federal minister in Nigeria. On your station, I came and opened up publicly when I saw the dangers and we saw that nobody was going to pay attention to what was going on. I remember the same government was going to appoint somebody who was obviously working for the opposition, a rapporteur. And I came to your station, we spoke about these things openly, okay? Now, prior to his time, the president before that said out openly that they had infiltrated his cabinet. So why would a nation look at something that collapses states from within? Other countries are battling it, they're holding on. And then we, who are the exemplar nation of Africa, we have everything it takes to deal with this issue. But unfortunately, we can see that they've studied us, they've looked at all our fault lines, they've looked at the foundation of the nation, they looked at the gaps, they're exploiting everything. Okay. Now, I think the one that concerns me mostly right now is that since I see that there's no will within the country, neither from the religious sector religious leadership. I mean, I served God and country for years. I have not yet seen the will in leadership, whether it's the religious sector, it's the political sector, you name it. Even in the fact that we look at the legal codes we're operating in Nigeria, are we saying that nobody is thinking in the country?
So, Pastor Thompson,
meet?
if you would propose a first step, let me take that round because we have just about 5 minutes to wrap this up. Mr. Aditoye, okay. If you would, Mr. Aditoye, beg your pardon, if you would propose a resolution, a first step, because indeed, I mean, Pastor Thompson has been talking about this for decades, and you have also, spoken about it in a thing or two over time. And there are those who would argue, Mr. Aditoye, that this can't happen under a military government. We used to have armed robbery. The Oyenusis, the Aninis, that's all we knew. They were neutralized and the matter ends before another one. But this one seems like, as he said, it seems like some kind of system that is moving from place to place. If you would propose solutions, what would be the first step?
I think the first step is for us to stop the killings.
How?
Good. And we've been trying, you mentioned about, it's not about generals. And there's this perception that military can solve everything. No. Nigeria is a very big country, and we don't have that military strength where you have boots everywhere. So the community will need to first take ownership. Now, the difference between Plateau State and others is that their own is more like ethno-religious crisis. While some states are, fighting non-state actors like criminals, robbers, but theirs is, so it is a problem from within. So when we can try first, because justice means different things to different people. Now, when you say you arrest, you prosecute, will that suffice for somebody who have lost, 3 children? Will he agree not to go and retaliate? Now, if the man decides to go and retaliate, maybe 6 months after, and that now attracts, problem to another community, we need to first of all stop the killing, then create a system where we can be able to talk and address this issue. Stopping it means that evolving, developing community security apparatus where each community will hone the protection of their community under the guidance of the state.
Mr. Aditoye, you said these communities must own it.
Yes.
How are they going to do that? They're not armed. So how are they going to face these people?
They have to be armed. I've given the example of Anambra State.
Who is going to be responsible? Is the government going to buy arms and distribute to the communities?
You will be surprised how in Anambra State, the town unions mobilized money to get this done. You'll be surprised how much each of these communities can raise. Those that we're talking that are carrying AK-47 about, they didn't pick it up from the roof. They were buying it. The reason why other communities are not buying, weapons is because they will not be allowed to carry one. But if we have a process in place that will be developed from the community up, not the one we'll create from the top, and then we want to push it to the community. Let's create a system where we allow the community to evolve this apparatus. We'll give them recognition. We'll put a process in place where those arms and ammunition will be registered and attached, recognized with a particular community. There are processes to train them, develop a process where they will be supervised and also be mobilized. Before and a Moray that will pray for 4 hours, 3 hours without response, there will be immediate response. There will be somebody to alert the security agencies
that something is happening somewhere.
And stop them.
Okay. Well, Mr. Dati, very quick one, 30 seconds. What would be your first step?
And that is whenever issues come with issues affecting Plateau State is looked at under the prism of religious ethnic diversity. No, the attacks that took place have already taken place earlier on in places like Wasi local government, which is predominantly Muslim, in Bashar, in Dengi, in Gagdi, these are areas that are Muslim populated. So it's good to look at things in the bigger context. There has been a pushback on these criminals from other places at Sambisa Forest, and most of them are passing through those forests and coming into the Middle Belt area to begin to continue with their criminality. So until we look at these criminals truly as who they are, instead of always masquerading whenever issues affect Plateau, there's been a different coloration to it, instead of looking at it as purely criminalities and dealing with it as such.
Okay.
How can you say it's an issue of ethnicity or religion when predominantly Muslim areas like Bashar I mentioned, Wasi, Dengue are being attacked?
Okay.
So there's a need to have a holistic approach and understand that this hydra-headed attack can only be resolved through a force and coordinated effort that will come through the support of the federal government, the state government, and the communities as a whole.
Okay.
And at this point in time, Plateau is bleeding.
Okay.
So we are pleading with the
Mr. Dati,
state. We are
that is
pleading with others to come and support what is happening.
Totally out of time right now. Well, Pastor Thompson, your last words on this.
Well, I think the gentleman who spoke last, people like him should be flogged publicly. No, I'm just joking, But the truth is this: we are dealing with a hydra. It is opportunistic. It studies every different society and collapses them from within. That's what a hydra does. It's extremely intelligent. So all I can just say right now for Nigeria right now is that it's obvious that judgment has been turned backward. Justice stands before us. Truth has fallen in the streets. Equity cannot enter. The truth is failing on a daily basis. And there's no way that God in heaven looks down on this and will ever be pleased that there's no judgment.
Okay.
The value of the life of the average citizen in Nigeria is so low that I don't see how we're going to win this if we don't.
Just before we round up, a reaction from a viewer, Professor Enakena, to effectively curtail the rising violence, murders, and persistent insecurity in Nigeria. Security agents must go beyond reactive operations and adopt a proactive, intelligence-driven, and community-rooted strategy. Security is not the job of soldiers and policemen alone. Political will, judicial integrity, economic reforms, and citizen involvement must work hand in hand. Only then can Nigeria sustainably reduce violence and restore national stability.
Well, they're coming in droves, and I saw another one from Festus Akimboye where it says it's certain that some highly placed people are benefiting from the senseless killings of innocent Nigerians. The sad thing is that if 1,000 innocent Nigerians are killed today, no head will roll.
Well, and like we said earlier, when soldiers are coming out now to share videos that they are being stopped from going after the bandits, then we begin to wonder about what Pastor Thompson said earlier about complicity from above. Well, that's where we have to leave it today. We really haven't scratched the surface of this at all, but that's the nature of live television. I'd just like to thank our panel, Mr. Yakubu Dati, Chairman, Governing Council of Federal Polytechnic, Ile-Oluji, and former Commissioner for Information in Plateau State, Mr. Yakubu Dati, who was in our studio in Abuja. Pastor Ladi Thompson, Conflict Resolution and Counterterrorism expert, who joined us virtually, as well as Mr. Sheyi Aditaya, former Regional Vice President, ASIS International West and Central Africa Region, who was with us in our studio in Lagos. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming to share your insights with us. Sunrise will be back with you in just a moment. Do stay with us.
Oh, we're still talking about security.